In sports, it's better to be hated and loved than to flatline. We'd rather have people say, we hate the Mavs, than not saying anything at all.
Today we're joined by George Killebrew, Vice President of the United Pickleball Association and a veteran sports executive who spent decades on the revenue side of teams, leagues, and billion-dollar franchise growth. In this episode, we unpack what actually drives value in modern sports, from media rights to emerging leagues, and where the smart money is going next.
The business of sports management. How do you see that lens of sports and business and money and all that aspect?
You mix the two. Like, you can't have the team and the business not be on the same page. But the game changer is when, these networks decided they have to acquire these rights, because live sports is still one of the few things that is live. And you don't want to not see it live because you're going to hear through social media or whatever what the result was.
What's the financial impact of winning or losing?
Losing for a long period of time, there is a financial impact. The consistency of winning is really where you have a huge economic impact.
The business of sports management. I mean, you've got advertisers, you've got the ticket sales. I mean, there's so many avenues of money for that world. But what was your specialty, and how do you see that lens of sports and business and money and all that aspect?
Yeah, so my whole career has really been on the business side, on the revenue side. So as chief revenue officer, at the Mavericks, I had the sponsorship group, I had the ticket sales group, I had the sponsor activation group, I had our arena revenues, that group. So, the successful teams like the Cowboys and what Jerry has done there is you mix the two. You can't have the team and the business not be on the same page. You try to mix them as best you can and keep them involved. And we did that at the Mavericks, working, with Mark Cuban, and, it's a business, right? And so Mark buys the team at, $280 million or so and wants to go out and buy the best free agents. Well, you got to have the revenue to do that. So Mark was very business forward and would lend himself to any sort of discussion with a sponsor or a season ticket holder or any of our real stakeholders, our broadcast partners. He was just a kind of a 24/7, 365 type of owner, which, is different than maybe 10 years before Mark, where owners would have their primary business, they'd make some money and they'd buy an NFL team or an NBA team and kind of run it as a project or the fun side of things. But now these owners are 24/7, 365, and Jerry was the original one, going all the way back to 1989. And when you watch that, which was very eye-opening, I thought I knew a lot about it, and I learned 3 or 4 things watching that, but he was losing $1 million a day, right? So if you've got to pay attention to the business side, and it's got to go hand in hand with the sport.
The aspect of pre-Jerry Jones is, like you said, it was a lot of sports were run as hobbies, or, hey, this is a really cool thing to have. And it was almost, it seems like out of necessity that, hey, because I'm losing so much money, I need to figure out how to make money. And then when he figured it out, it's like, let's learn how to make a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, the stakes have risen, right? So Mark buys the Mavs at, around $290 million, and then sells, to the Adelsons at a $4 billion valuation. So the stakes change, right, over time.
A little bit more.
Yeah. So, and the same was with Jerry when he bought the Cowboys, and now what it's worth today, that, arguably the most, franchise that's the most valuable in the world. You don't do that by not paying attention to the business,
And what's interesting about that is if you think about who's got the largest fandom, it's got to be something like a Manchester United or a Real Madrid that has a global footprint. But when you think about the money side, it's the Dallas Cowboys. And yeah, there's a huge audience, but compared to one of those football clubs, it's got to be a fraction.
Yeah, and there's an interesting trend of kind of U.S. sports executives going overseas and running those types of teams, because the commercialization wasn't as important as it is today, and they've kind of seen what happens on the U.S. professional sports landscape and pluck certain executives that are willing to make the move and live in London or somewhere like that to run a soccer team. And it's just the stakes have changed, with the broadcast deals that are going down now in the NFL and the NBA and some of these other leagues. It's really, really big business, and it needs the attention.
Well, you look at the Wrexham guys, I think they just sold a stake, Ryan Reynolds and Rob They bought that team for $1 million or $2 million, and then they leveraged their brand and to grow it. I think they've promoted 3 times, something like that. And now I think I saw a headline that they sold off a chunk, probably for a massive profit. I don't know the details, but
yeah, a lot of times the operating income of sports franchises, you can lose money on the operating side, but franchise values continue to rise to an extent where it makes those losses tolerable. And in Mark's case, in the early years of the Mavs, as we were building the American Airlines Center, there were operating losses each year, but franchise value was growing. And that's why you have to have owners, that have the wherewithal, that can handle operating losses in the near term, knowing that maybe one day you sell it at a huge multiple from what you bought it at.
That actually intersects with our recent guest last month, Dan Hunt. I was aware of Lamar Hunt's efforts with the Kansas City Chiefs, which I think he said they had a total investment of $25,000 in, and that would have been the 1960s. Is that, Rabbi? What I didn't know, which we learned, you may have known this, is they're the minority shareholders in the Chicago Bulls. And he told the story that the minority shareholders prior to Lamar taking their stake were frustrated because they were experiencing operating losses and they were getting, calls. And so they were ready to get out. It happened to be the year before Michael Jordan was drafted. So Lamar turned them down, and according to Dan, went home and told his wife, who was a bigger basketball fan, that he had declined the offer, and she said, "You called them back." So I think he said they invested a similar amount, something less than $100,000. To buy a meaningful stake in the Chicago Bulls. So, from $25,000 to get in the game in the 1960s to when did Mark Cuban buy the Mavericks?
January of 2000.
So fast forward to 2000.
That was only 2000?
I know.
It feels like it was, because it feels like it was like the 90s.
Like 100 years ago?
No, it feels like the 2000 sounds like it was yesterday.
It's hard to believe. Like he was on year 25, when he kind of took some partners and stepped back.
I apologize.
No, that's fine. So it's $25,000 to create a league and start a team in the 1960s to $290 million to buy an NBA team in the 2000s to 2024, exiting at a $4 billion valuation. Is there a mathematical rationale for that team being worth $4 billion?
Yeah, I think there is. And then shortly thereafter, the Lakers transacted for $10 billion. What has changed is the amount of money that the media companies are willing to invest in these leagues. That's the real money, right? So you can only sell, so the American Airlines Center holds 20,000 people. It doesn't get any bigger, it doesn't get to 40,000, right? So you can sell 20,000 tickets a night, 41 nights a year. You can have your sponsorships and everything, your local revenues. But the game changer is when, these networks decided they have to acquire these rights, because live sports is still one of the few things that is live, on television. And you don't want to not see it live because you're going to hear through social media or whatever what the result was. So it's appointment television. Therefore, the ratings are good. And the 600-pound gorilla, of course, is the NFL. But each of the member teams are getting their equal share of those media rights deals, and franchise values grow because that's the biggest revenue stream that's changed.
And advertisers have to underwrite that. So clearly selling your product or service during an NFL game or an NBA game is enormous. In the back of my mind, I keep thinking that gambling plays a large role in this as well. Does an NBA team get revenue from the gaming because they're capturing statistics and people are betting in real time? Are they part of that revenue stream? I know the Adelsons would like for gambling to be a larger part.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of two different issues, right? So you have the DraftKings and FanDuels of the world, and the teams don't get necessarily a share of that. Now, they can have them as sponsors, and they can spend sponsorship dollars to create a FanDuel lounge in the arena or what have you. And, in the Adelsons case, being in the casino business, that's probably the long-term play there, right? At some point to build, an arena, attached to a high-end resort, attached to a casino once, gambling is legal in the state of Texas. So I think that's their play. That's what they want, and they're patient, and they have the wherewithal again to wait until that day occurs. But I think that's kind of their number one want.
Could that be a possible reason why, everything that's going on in American Airlines Center with contracts and like, will they be there? Will they sign? Will they commit? Because I'm not really too familiar with what's going on. I just know that there's chatter that I've never heard about, and now it's like, where are they going to play next?
Right. It's taken a really interesting turn. So what people don't remember is when the Dallas Stars moved to town, we were at Reunion Arena. The American Airlines Center wasn't built. And in the first week, they put up a Miller Lite dasher board at their hockey game, and it was a Budweiser exclusive arena. And we ended up in court when we met each other. So then, as cooler heads prevailed and we decided to build an arena together, it was just the perfect storm. They had won the Stanley Cup. Mark Cuban had bought the Mavericks. The economy in Texas was great and in the nation. And so we built this building together as partners, 50-50 partners. So we went from lawsuit on day one, 50-50 partners, and we built the Taj Mahal at the time of arenas. It was the largest naming rights deal ever done to date with American Airlines, $6.5 million a year for 30 years. We sold all the premium product, all the suites, all the club seats. So you bought it, you got it for Mavs and Stars, and the rights for third-party events. And we created this incredible business, really incredible business. We paid off the notes the small notes that were there, the bonds for that arena, in 6 years, not 30 years. Right? So the arena is cash flowing, and we're having operating losses on both sides. Both teams were losing money operating wise, but the arena was cash flowing. We became the third busiest arena in the country. A lot of times a West Coast act or an East Coast act will play Dallas because you're right in the middle. And it was just a robust and a great business relationship. And now here we are as the teams are moving apart. And, I think unfortunately, the rhetoric that's been in the newspaper, and now there's lawsuits and things like that, is unfortunate. The reality is the Adelsons want to build the best basketball arena in the country. And you can't do that with a hockey team because the sheet of ice for hockey makes you build an arena that has to be wider. You lose some of your intimacy that you can have if you build basketball only, which is fine. That's their prerogative. And I wish that was the narrative. Hey, we've had a great 30 years together. We built a great business. We had championships out of that building. That building is terrific to this day, really 25 years later, believe it or not. You look at some of the other buildings that came online around then, and you go into them and they look old. American Airlines Center does not. It's well maintained. If that was the rhetoric of like, hey, it's been great. We wish you all the best. Go win Stanley Cups, and you guys go win O'Brien trophies, but we're going to build a basketball-only arena. So it doesn't have to do with all to me, the pettiness that's being kind of explored right now between the two teams. And it's sad because we did have a really proud history together.
And the way you laid it out right there, it makes complete sense to me. It's like, hey, we've proven that you can definitely have a basketball, hockey hybrid arena together. But if you want to be the premier stadium, you need to pick a lane. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I've never heard it said like that.
Well, and that's what I don't understand. Yeah. So I'm not there on the record.
Right.
So this is just my opinion. But that's what I wish the rhetoric was. That's okay. I think people around Dallas would understand that. And Dallas is a different kind of city. They love their teams, and the owners are very high profile in nature. There was a time where it was Jerry Jones and Mark Cuban and Nolan Ryan running Texas. That was cool, and Tom Hicks, who we built the American Airlines Center with when he was the owner of the Stars, was a wonderful man. Ross Perot Jr. was the owner of the Mavs at the time. So that project got done because those two owners really admired one another and liked to work with one another, and that's why it all worked. And now it's kind of devolved into what it is. And the Adelsons have the wherewithal to build the finest of anything, right? So that's going to be great for the city of Dallas or wherever it ends up. It may end up on that Irving site where the old Texas Stadium was. That's okay. It's not like it's moved to Fort Worth or something like that. It's still accessible, to the citizens of Dallas. So, I think it's going to be great at the end, and the Stars will build a great hockey arena. It's just probably not going to be together.
I think that would be biggest marketing move of all time if somebody built a stadium at the old Irving Stadium, but the exterior looked like the old one. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they have the land.
If somebody did that and like, hey, the exterior, yes, it's a basketball team, or yes, it's a hockey arena, but the exterior is the old Texas Stadium, that would be a giant marketing play. Just putting it out there, you know. Pay me my point.
George, back up a little bit. You're an SMU grad, and it sounds like from your background that you went kind of straight into the business of sports. Can you walk us through that journey?
Yeah, so I graduated from SMU, from the Cox School, with a business degree, and the Mavericks had played a game when I was a junior in college in Moody Coliseum.
Wow.
Because Reunion Arena, back to Lamar Hunt, Reunion Arena was leased to WCT, which Lamar owned, the tennis, tour. And so no one thought the Mavericks would make the playoffs that early in their journey, and they ended up making it, but the arena was booked. Can you imagine in today's NBA saying we can't host your first round playoff game against the Seattle Supersonics? So they moved it to Moody Coliseum. My fraternity house was right next door. I'd never seen an NBA game. I'm from Hawaii originally, so I'd never seen really a lot of professional sports. We were parking cars in the parking lot, charging $20, and this guy pulls up and says, I don't have $20 on me, but I have an extra ticket to the game. Would you like to go? And I said, yeah. I had an exam the next day, so I took my books, and I sat in the worst seat of Moody Coliseum and watched the most exciting thing I'd ever seen. Like the game didn't go to overtime, but there was a question on the last shot, and the Mavericks ran into their locker room, and the referees looked at it, and they called them back on the court to replay the final 3 seconds. And I'm sitting there with my book saying, this is incredible. This is what I want to do. So back then, the front office is like 35 people. Today, it's 235 people or so. And it was kind of hard to get in, but I went to work for the Mustang Club right at SMU, so I was in the athletic department, and then the Mavericks bought an indoor soccer team called the Dallas Sidekicks. I knew someone at the Mavericks, and I said, hey, can I come over and do that? I knew I'd be officing with them, and that's how I got in. And the guy said, well, you a soccer expert? I said, absolutely. Indoor soccer is my thing, but I just felt like if I got the address of the arena was 777 Sports Street. I'm like,
oh, wow. If
I could get that on a business card, I'm in heaven.
Yeah.
So
it's a college kid's dream, right?
It was definitely mine. I knew very early on, I can remember being in 5th grade and wanting to be a sports announcer. So I knew what I wanted. It just was hard to get in because the stars weren't even here. Jerry had just bought the Cowboys, so he brought all his kind of people in, and I just didn't know if I was going to be able to get in at that level. Now we tell all the sports management students over at SMU, you can put the Cowboys at the top of your list or the Mavericks or whatever, but that list has got to be 250 companies deep that are involved in sports in North Texas. From sponsors to media partners to collegiate pieces to professional.
So as far as the different roles within the business of sports, obviously if you're an owner, you already have all your money. And obviously, if you're a professional athlete, you're doing pretty well. But what about everybody in between? Other than the coaching staff, the business folks within sports, is it a meaningful career? Can you make gajillions of dollars, or is it, hey, I'm middle management the rest of my life? I'm asking from a place of pure ignorance.
Yeah, I wish Mark Cuban was sitting here with us because he definitely has strong opinions of it. So the only place within the business organization that you can make a lot of money is in sales. Because you get whatever your salary is, and then you get commissions depending on how good you are. And Mark on day one said, and the Mavericks were really down when he got here. And one of the only meetings that he called the whole staff together, and he called all the salespeople together, ticket sales, sponsorship, and said, listen, we're at the bottom because I'm going to turn this quickly. The product's going to get good very quickly, and I will never cut your commissions. Just hang in there. The Mavericks were bad for really a decade. The 90s, there wasn't a winning season in the 90s. So the rumors of Mark start to come out in December of 99, and then he buys it in January from Ross, and he did turn it quickly. So, to answer your question, do you want to be an accountant for, a professional basketball team or a copier company? It gets a lot of people with passion that really want to have the winning and losing and really that kind of lifestyle on kind of just a strict salary standpoint. But if you are in sales, the sky's the limit. Then all of a sudden the American Airlines Center pops up where we have things like suites and things that we never had before and naming rights opportunities like we talked about with American. It can be good, it can be good. But that's not the reason to take a job in sports.
Yeah.
You got to have it inside because it's a lot of nights. It's a lot of work. And
I have a friend. She just graduated recently at SMU MBA, and she had worked at the Miami Dolphins, also the Chicago Bears, and she wanted to have a career in sports. So I have a friend, Chuck Breaks, over in Frisco Sports. I don't know if you know Chuck. And I was like, well, let's meet up. Let's talk about the future and what you could do, this and that. And then she let it slip that she, I just don't want to work in the family business. Wait, what's the family business? Hotels. And we're like, do the family business. What are you doing? But because again, it was that point of like, when you work in sports, you can do well, but you're never, unless, like you said, in sales, you're not going to be owner of anything.
Mark, and not just to point at Mark, but he did some pretty incredible things for the employees when he sold to the Adelsons. Probably not good for on-camera stuff, but he realized that, and he took care of a lot of people. There are a lot of people that put in. We just went to a retirement party for a guy at the Mavs who'd been there 33 years. I had 27 years. So you can put in some real time. And but my story was very similar. My dad had a construction supply company in Hawaii. And so he said, you go off to college and learn business and get a degree and come back. And I finally just said to him, that's not what I want to do. And luckily he was one of those supportive fathers who goes, well, follow your dream. What do you want to do? I said, I want to work in sports. That's what gets me excited. And he's like, go for it.
Yeah, you definitely have, like, whether you're at the Mavericks or the Cowboys or rugby or now pickleball, like there's definitely a giant like appeal to that, from like it's just fun. Same thing with me, like working in media. Media is fun, it's cool, it's sexy, right? Versus like I work in real estate.
Every time I say that, I say the same thing a lot when I'm talking to some of the kids that are in the sports management program, and every time I say something like that, they go, "My dad's in real estate. My dad's in the copy business."
Well, I mean, right. we're in Old Parkland, where it's built off of a real estate empire.
Right. Yeah. So 27 years at the Mavericks, and I guess about 10 years in, they win the NBA championship. So you talk about your passion for sports, and that's one of the reasons you gravitate towards that, because there's a paycheck, but you're attached to wins and losses. What was that like? What did that feel like personally and professionally?
Yeah, it was crazy. Mostly because 5 years earlier, we were in the finals against the same team and lost. Yeah. And if you remember, the format back then in 2006 was a 2-3-2, and we'd won the 2 games in Dallas. So we're up 2-0 going to Miami. And in that third game, we were leading by about 15 points in the fourth quarter. And no team in the history of the NBA had come back from down 0-3. Yeah. So we'd known if we had won game 3, if the odds stay with you, you're likely an NBA champion. Right. And it literally slipped through our fingers. We lost that game. Miami came back and beat us. We lost game 4. We lost game 5, and then we lost game 6 on our court here in Dallas. And that's the lowest of lows. Yeah. Because we were that close. It's one thing just to not have a shot and just be a mediocre team or whatever. We were that close, and we were actually better than them. And then to rewrite that script 5 years later against the same team, and then have us win in Game 6 on their court, with them having the better team probably at that point, was incredible. It's like a storybook kind of thing, and it'll be at the top of the list of, after 27 years, what did you like the best? That was it, and then you get to work on things like championship rings, and you get to work on things like championship parades, and you get to work on things like championship merchandise, and everybody's smiling. Yeah. Now the downside is 30 days after we won the championship in 2011, we locked out our players. We went into a labor dispute as a league. Yeah. And so it wasn't as, I guess, fruitful as it could have been. Right. We lost a lot of momentum there. It got solved in a timely fashion, but it's pretty incredible.
Could have been worse.
Similar players from the team in 06 to 011?
Yes.
So there was retribution. Yeah. There was a personal stake in it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Dirk Nowitzki's career, all with one team in this city, and he was obviously 5 years younger in 2006, so all the people that really know basketball kind of said to us after 06 is like, you missed your window. Like you had Dirk in his prime and you've kind of missed the window. And we made an acquisition of Jason Kidd, who was way too old to be a starting point guard, really, certainly on an NBA team. That's what people said. So we retooled a little bit, not a lot, put some pieces around it. Sometimes when you look at the runs, like you have to win 4 series in order to win the championship. And, our opening one was with the Lakers. We swept the Lakers 4-0, and it's the last time Phil Jackson ever coached a game. We had a little guard by the name of J.J. Barea that won one of those games for us. And Phil Jackson in his post-game press conference said we weren't ready for Barrera. He didn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
So we had players on that team step up and win games to help us win series. We had a guy by the name of Peja Stojakovic who had a great career at Sacramento and kind of ended his career with us. And he won a couple of those games too with his 3-point shooting. So it was really one of those kind of team efforts. But Jason Terry, Dirk Nowitzki, Jason Kidd, Sean Marion were the kind of the centerpieces of that 11 team. And Dirk willed that team to victory. Like there was no question about that. He wasn't going to go out as a loser, and he took real offense in 2006. The Heat kind of made a little bit of fun of him because he was a little sick during that series, and they caught LeBron James on camera like mocking him a little bit, and he just said, I'm going to put this on my shoulders and win it. In my opinion, I think that's what he did.
Yeah. What's the financial impact of winning or losing?
Losing for a long period of time, there is a financial impact. But if you look what kind of Mark's body of work, from 2000 till just recently, there was a lot of winning being done. And so the consistency of winning is really where you have a huge economic impact, because your season ticket holders and your sponsors and your stakeholders now know what to expect out of the Dallas Mavericks, or a Mark Cuban-led Dallas Mavericks. Like, we're going to win. We don't know how far we're going to go. We don't know that we're going to go all the way every year, but we know we're going to be in the playoffs. We know the arena's going to be packed. We know it's going to be exciting. And so we're going to ride with you. Like, that consistency is really important in fandom. It's really important in sponsorships for kind of the flagship partners underneath American, companies like Ford and Coca-Cola and Budweiser. They want that consistency. They don't want the ups and downs, and all we got to fire the coach, we got to retool. That's where it kind of ebbs and flows. But if you're consistently good from a revenue perspective, then you can be great. And the NBA measures all of that. And during that run, we were a top 5 revenue team year in and year out for a long, long time because of that. And there's bigger markets in the NBA, like in LA, you got 2 teams. In New York, you got 2 teams. You got Chicago, Miami, some really great markets. But, during that run, because our fans knew that we were going to be in the conversation, everybody kept their season tickets, all the sponsors stayed on board, and we just rode that wave for quite a long time.
What about like a playoff run? Because I forgot what the financial impact of having like the World Cup in Dallas in North Texas. I know it's billions and billions, but like having a successful playoff run, what is the financial impact on a city, on a region, on the company itself?
Every time you get a game in the postseason, the cash register rings. And then if you get to the next round, prices go up. And then in the third round, the Western Conference Finals, prices go up. And Mark was very good about not price gouging, by the way. He was, there are $10 tickets in the American Airlines Center. Anybody can come to a Mavs game. And then in the finals, it's, the same thing. So if you sweep, that's not always the greatest thing from a business perspective. You really want to win that Lakers series that I talked about? It would have been great to win it on Game 7 on our court to get into the second round. Now, the basketball people would disagree with you. They would say, no, we want to sweep and get on to the next round and rest and do all those kind of things. But, there was one year, I can't remember the exact year, but the Mavs and Stars both had this incredible run with lots of games, lots of postseason games. So the season ends April the 15th. You win the championship if you get so fortunate in mid-June, and there's just games all the way in between. And that's very lucrative. But you can't budget for that, right? You budget for the 41 games you're going to get, and then everything else is just gravy.
And then you spoke about earlier about, sometimes you're at an operational loss, but that brand value increases. Like when you do have those successful playoff runs, those successful winning streaks, maybe the money is going up, but is there like a multiple value that gets applied to the brand value?
I think so. And I think what we were able to do during that time is be a very attractive place to play for free agents. And Mark was very good at that. I mean, we don't have beaches. So if you're thinking between, if beaches are important to you as a player, you're probably going to go to the Lakers, the Clippers, or the Heat. But we do have things in Dallas where we can put our best foot forward. And I think players were very comfortable coming here just because of the ecosystem we created. The arena was sold out every night. They knew they were going to be valued. They knew they had a stable owner. The guy at the top was stable, which is important in sports. He's deep pocketed, so he's able to make the changes and do the things that players want. And as you grow that, we went from the laughing stock, literally the laughing stock of the league, and not just in our league, in all leagues. We were the laughing stock in the country in professional sports. My first year, we went 11-71. We won 11 games and lost 71 games. The next year, we got really good and we went 13-69. And it was a national story of just what is happening in Dallas. This is just a joke. So there isn't a lot of value being created in those years. But then when you get on a 20-year run, like we did starting in 2000, just grows every year.
Yeah, but 11-13, isn't that like a 15-20% increase?
That's what we'd be saying to anyone who would listen to us. The problem is no one wanted to listen to us.
We won more games.
No, you don't understand. We improved 20%.
Yeah. We go into meetings and go talk to companies based in Dallas. They're like, "You guys still here? You guys still playing?" It was. We had some really tough times. That no one wanted to talk to us, and we like to say, in sports, it's better to be hated and loved than to flatline, right? At least like no one was calling in on the ticket saying, "What's going on at the Mavs?" We were flatlining. No one cared. And so we'd rather have people saying, "We hate the Mavs," than not saying anything at all. And so we went through that kind of a period. And then Mark gets here and just puts it on his shoulders, squarely on his shoulders. And because we still didn't have great players at that point, but he's like, "I'm just going to have to get out there and help make this brand recognizable. And if it has to be me, fine, I'll do it. At some point, we'll push the players to the forefront when they're ready," which is what he did,
So you talked about the Mavericks selling for $4 billion and the Lakers going for $10 billion. And, we just talked about how the multiple effect of winning and culture and how it increases the brand value. Are there any examples of the brand value decreasing even with losses?
Sure.
You look at the Cowboys, and they have been relevant for 30 years, but yet they still keep growing in their brand value.
That is the greatest test case there is in sports. It's the beauty of the Jones family because their businesses are thriving around the Cowboys. Who wins and losses, you don't want to say who cares? The fans actually really care. But despite the fact they haven't had that success, it's amazing, what he's been able to accomplish here in Dallas. And we're friends with the family. And when you get a true Cowboy fan that gets mad, I'm not a true Cowboy fan, honestly, but it gets mad, "Oh, I can't believe, blah, blah, blah." I just smile. I don't even watch that piece. I just watch what Jerry Jones and Steven and the family do around the business because that's the part I'm in. I'm not in the team side. So you watch that and there's no chink in the armor there. They're the most valuable franchise there is. And they hadn't really won consistently in a long time.
But what about the opposite? And because I don't follow sports enough to know the ins and outs, especially on the business side. I know anecdotally the NFL Browns have been a joke forever. But is there any franchise out there that was once the cream of the crop and now is no one will buy them because they're so bad?
Not in the NBA or the NFL for sure,
yeah.
Because of the national media money. You'll see stadiums in the NFL or arenas in the NBA that aren't 100% full, but it's okay because those are local revenues. The daddy over it being the league and the media rights deals and your share of that, they're all valuable. The worst team in the NBA and the worst team in the NFL are still incredibly valuable, and they don't diminish by being the worst in those leagues.
So you spoke earlier about American execs going over to Europe and the European Football League and whatnot to take those lessons over there. Are there any lessons that are in the international sports that have been or should be or are being looked at to be brought into the American sports business culture?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about rugby earlier. You're a former player. I was the commissioner of Major League Rugby, and rugby is a sport that is loved around the world except in one place, and that's North America. We're the last to the table there, but we were able to make a bid for the Rugby World Cup to come to the United States, which it will be doing in 2031 for the men and 2033 for the women. But what you see is in America, there's certain things we like about our sports. We like lots of action. We like music. We like great concessions. We like great facilities. We want a really good experience with the high definition TVs being as good as they are. You have to have a reason to get off the couch and attend a Mavs game or a Cowboy game or a Ranger game or a Stars game. In overseas, especially in rugby, there was no game presentation. You got your beer, you sat in your seat, and you just loved the sport and watched it. But there was no bells and whistles. There was no jumbotron. There were no replays. There were no all the things that American sports fans command, if they're going to attend. So it's been interesting in soccer, to try to take some of these things that the NFL and the NBA do really well off the court and off the field and try to overlay them in traditional sports that really don't do that.
I remember, when I was a kid, going to NFL games with my parents, whatnot, and then there was a gap in my adultness to go to games. And I remember going to a game in early 2000s, 11s, 12s, 13s, whatever. And I'm sitting there at a Cowboy game, and I'm like, this feels more like I'm watching a Broadway musical or a wrestling match. Because the showmanship, the circus aspect of it, the bells, the whistles, the fireworks, the smoke, the music, I was like, when's the football start?
You have to have something for everyone. We talk about that a lot. If, you're a family of four, we'll say, and, you may want to go to a Mavs game. There's got to be something for the dad. There's got to be something for the mom. There's got to be something for the kids. If you bring the grandparents along, there's got to be something for them. And what each person finds important is not necessarily what the other person finds important. One person may just love basketball and want to grind on the game. Some people like the funny things that we do on the center hung scoreboard. The kids may love the mascots and find them funny. Someone may like the concession items. They may like that it's air conditioned and it's a 2-hour time commitment. So you got to check all those boxes these days in the sports landscape in the U.S. because getting people to attend rather than just watching their beautiful television is hard. You have to earn that, kind of driveway to driveway. You got to earn it all the way there. It's got to be a great experience. Everyone can go to things once, but are they going to go back, and are they going to keep going back and buy season tickets and have to consume it live in order to really appreciate it rather than watching it on television?
There's only been one sports experience that I was like, I will never do this again. And that was a July 4th Texas Rangers game in the old ballpark at Arlington, because it was miserably, ungodly hot in the sun, in the heat. I'm like, why would anybody do this? And it was for the fireworks. I'm like, I can watch that at home.
Well, that's the indoor facilities now, have
Right.
that, with the Mavs and Stars, it's 100 nights together probably. And you know what you're getting. It's in downtown, which is awesome. And right off the tollway, a lot of good egress and ingress into that facility. And it's 2 hours of your life. And, whether you're into it or not into it, you're going to go. And, and so, you have a little advantage there for those kind of facilities.
So talk about the transition from the Mavericks to Major League Rugby. You go from a team that's won a championship in their sport to a young upstart sport in the U.S., as you said, challenged here in the U.S. What was that like?
Of the nice things I've said about Mark Cuban, now I'll say this mean thing again. So he was a rugby player. That was his first love.
Really?
Played rugby at the University of Indiana. All his rugby teammates would come to Mavs games, and they're a wild bunch, and so he called one day, and Major League Rugby was looking for a commissioner. He said, "You ought to do this because you've been here forever." And I tried to leave a couple of times to do other things, and he kind of wrote me back in, and I have no regrets of that. But I never thought I'd going to be at the Mavericks for 27 years. Like you wake up one day and it's been 20 years, and you're like, what happened? Because it moves so fast. So, and I go, well, Mark, as you know, I don't know anything about rugby, so why are you talking to me about this? He goes, it's not about rugby, right? But rugby will take it. There is no competition. There is no other professional league in the U.S. We also had a team in Canada. He said they need the kind of NBA playbook of the business. Season tickets and sponsorships and merchandise, like all the things that we do here at the Mavs and you've done, you just need to run that playbook, so you should go do that. And so I did, and it was great. I did it. I had a 3-year contract I stayed for. I learned very quickly that the reason that the big time commissioners of the NFL and the NBA, they're all attorneys. They're attorneys by trade. I am not an attorney by trade, and you spend a lot of time on those kind of issues. But I really grew to love the game. I didn't know anything about the game. It took me forever to understand the rules. It's just not an Americanized sport that you can explain to someone in one sitting. I really admire the athletes to be able to play a game like that with no padding. Yeah. It's just an incredible culture. But it wasn't very Americanized. We made 3 rule changes right off the bat, and in rugby circles around the world, I was the devil. I'm ruining their game. Yeah. I put a shot clock in. I told them they had to wear their names on the back of their jerseys. They said, no, we don't do that. It's a team sport where it's all as one. I'm like, no, it isn't. We want kids growing up to want to be LeBron James. When they see James on the back of his jersey, we're going to do that here. And there's too much standing around, so we're going to put a kick clock on. And we did. And we Americanized it, and we made some progress, not the progress that we need to make, because it is a beautiful game and the World Cup is coming, but it was a lot of fun. And I told my friends when they asked me what was the best thing about the job, I said, well, my name was on the ball. Yeah, that was why. Sure. It's nice to be called commissioner. I made my kids call me commissioner. No, I didn't really do that, but it's a neat culture, as you know. You played the game, and we just need more of you. That's the problem is, people that kind of like that a lot of them played football, and if they could make it at football, a lot of people that play rugby in the U.S. are ones that didn't really make it at football. They kind of moved back to rugby a little bit. But
I mean, obviously the financial implications of playing a football or baseball or hockey, or maybe not hockey, but maybe hockey, I don't know. But definitely the NBA and definitely like international soccer, like, what are the salaries in international rugby? Is it comparable? Obviously, it wouldn't be that in America, but like around the globe.
Yeah, I think it is comparable. Even European rugby clubs are having some issues for the reasons that I just said. Fans have changed, and it's not good enough just to sell them a ticket and have them sit in their seat for 2.5 hours with nothing else. Like, if the family of 4 discussion doesn't really work. I noticed that in MLR. Like, the dad would come, maybe like you. I played the game and I love rugby. I'm like, well, where's the crew? Well, my wife doesn't care for it. My kids don't understand it, and they're not entertained. Well, that takes your attendance and cuts it by 75%. You're just getting one attendee from a family. So it does pay well still internationally. Here, we had a salary cap. Each team had $600,000 which is not a lot of money to distribute to those players. So it wasn't like a get rich thing. And these guys that played it, they love the game. I mean, it's not like they're going to say, well, instead of that, I'm going to do this. Like, this was their game. It's in their blood. It's in their ancestors' blood. And they fight hard. It's sad. I wish they were paid as well as a football player, because they're at as much risk as any football player, but they're not doing it with any padding. So I have a lot of admiration for those athletes.
So the rugby was an extension of the relationship with Cuban, but not pickleball.
No, pickleball.
That's not
awesome.
A Mark Cuban thing.
No, it kind of is. So there's a guy in town by the name of Tom Dundon.
Yeah.
Tom's an SMU graduate. He was a season ticket holder of the Mavs all these years. Had a lot of business success. Sold his company to Santander, and he used to fly us on his plane to Mavs games. We got to know him a little bit, and one day he called and said, hey, would Mark talk to me about buying an NBA team? I said, of course he would. You've been a good friend of the Mavs. And so they got together, and the problem at the time, there was no NBA team for sale. So Tom bought the Carolina Hurricanes in the NHL. Tom was one of the early founders of Topgolf. Oh. Now you fast forward a little bit. He and his group just bought the Portland Trail Blazers. They haven't been approved by the NBA yet. That'll happen in March. And then he got hooked on pickleball. So he had a lot of tennis courts at his house. He changed them all over to pickleball. So I was playing with him at his house. And then one day I fell off the invite list. I wasn't getting the invite. My partner and we texted Tom and said, hey, did we do something wrong here? And he's like, no, I'm taking this game completely serious. I just hired the best player in the world to be my personal coach, and I'm only playing with professionals now. So if you guys want to do that, great, you're welcome back, but I'm going all in. And so, which was fine. And then all of a sudden one day he said, hey, I'm getting serious about the business side of this now too, not just the play. And so he bought the PPA Tour, Think of like the PGA Tour goes around city to city, which was based in Salt Lake City, moved it to Dallas. We folded in Major League Pickleball, so you had two kind of, entities that were rivaling each other and trying to pay the players more. And he realized, that happens a lot. It happens in professional lacrosse where you have, and it's just not good for an emerging sport. So he said, let's buy that, fold it in, bought a lot of the digital assets, things like pickleball.com, and we own Pickleball Central, which is where you go to get your gear, kind of like tennis players do with Tennis Warehouse, and put them all. He owns office buildings in downtown Dallas, and so we're running with that. So we have about 100 in the Dallas office on Ross Avenue. We have about 100 full-time employees on pickleball only, and then we have a bunch of other employees that are kind of remote. And the sport's just exploding. It's for the 4th year in a row by a third-party agency that looks at participation sports. Just got voted the fastest growing sport in the U.S. again, year over year for the 4th time, which is really hard to do. We used to watch that study at the Mavs to see kind of what's next, and something would pop up, and win it 1 year, that's doable. To win it 4 years in a row is incredible. So we think there's somewhere between, depending who you believe, 20 million and 40 million people playing the game right now. It's just like a cult movement. It's a fun game. It's a game that's fairly simple. You can play with your 7-year-old son or your 70-year-old dad. It's not like certain sports where you have to have some good acumen to get out there and play. And we have perfect gender equity. Our female professionals make the same amount as our male professionals. They're on television the same amount of time. And it's just a really interesting and fun phenomenon right now.
When you say the fastest growing sport, is that in terms of actual playing or people watching?
Playing. Participation.
I didn't know there was a professional league. I also didn't know it was on TV. And also, I don't really know what it is. So it's like,
You're not old enough.
Is it tennis and ping pong merged together? Like
it has a lot of similarities to ping pong. That's why it's an easy entry. So like if you hadn't played and someone says, hey, come over and play. It's not like if you don't play golf and you get invited to play golf, you politely decline because you don't want to embarrass yourself. It's a pretty easy entry. But so I'm on my 2nd year. When we first got there, it skewed very older. Older people were playing it. That age has come all the way down. Now on the professional tour, we just signed a 14-year-old, a kid out of Hawaii, that's signed to a professional contract. And kind of the first iteration of pickleball were tennis players that moved into pickleball. The number one player in the world on the men's side and women's side were both tennis players, and they found this game and excelled at this game. Now what's happening are the kids never played tennis. Like the one I was telling you about, he started playing pickleball, and it's just, I've never really seen anything like it in my career. Like the revenue numbers, and I tell the people there all the time, like at the Mavericks, like I know exactly what we were going to do in sponsorships and ticket sales, and it's pretty predictable business. Here, especially on the sponsorship side, because brands love the fact that it has this wide demographic, and they love the gender equity piece, and are willing to kind of invest in that in sports to reach that demographic is hard. Like Budweiser would say to me every year, we're looking to reach men 18 to 34. How are we doing in that demographic? And we pull our Nielsen data and say, here's our TV ratings for that demographic. And they'd say, that's great. We're willing to, invest X amount in a sponsorship based on a very narrow demo. This is wild. We have people trying to target kids. We have people trying to target 70-year-olds. Insure is one of our big sponsors. Humana is one of our big sponsors. And DoorDash is one of our big sponsors. So DoorDash is not trying to get to the 60 and 70-year-olds. They're trying to reach, younger mobile sports fans. So it's just this a phenomenon that's, everyone keeps saying, where's the chink in the armor? When is it? Is it a fad? Is it going to go away? We haven't seen any of that. You talk to the city of Dallas, the Parks and Recs, their biggest complaint from residents in the city is there's not enough courts. There's too many tennis courts that are sitting there not being used, and not enough pickleball courts. There's lines for the pickleball courts, and not to talk negatively about tennis, but because all racket sports are growing. So there's a new game coming called Padel. It's a Latin American game. They play with walls. Think more racquetball. Mm-hmm. So it's coming. And
is it like highlight?
Not like highlight. No, it's racket. So it's more like the old racquetball you used to see in gyms all the time. So you have pickleball, you have padel, and you have tennis, and all three of the racket sports are growing double-digit degrees, and it's fun to see.
I have a good friend in New Orleans and that owns the New Orleans Tennis Club, and they've converted all the tennis courts to pickleball, and now they're putting padel courts in as well.
Yeah.
And so I guess that leads me to sort of question, is this going to cannibalize tennis?
I mean, I play tennis. That's what I grew up playing. Now I play pickleball. I want to play padel because I used to play racquetball. I just haven't done it yet, but I will do it. But you should sometime talk to David Pillsbury. Do you know that name? He's president of Invited, which used to be Club Corp of America. Mm-hmm. I think they're the largest owner of country clubs across the country. Brookhaven Country Club here was their first one. It was Bob Denman's company before that, Club Corp. And we take our Super Bowl of pickleball to Brookhaven Country Club every November. And David said, our members, they have 3 18-hole courses at Brookhaven. Our members and their families are demanding more. Like the day of just having a golf club or just a tennis club, those are over. You have to have all of it.
Yeah.
Because you get back to that discussion of the family of 4, you got to please everybody. It's not just good enough to have just golf. And so before we did our first, our Super Bowl version of pickleball, our World Championships at Brookhaven, David said, we got to make changes here. They put $5 million into that club. And, we need a lot of outdoor courts. We need indoor courts. We need a championship court. And he did all of it. He said, and they changed the name of the club. It used to be called Brookhaven Country Club. Then it was called Brookhaven Golf Club. Now it's called Brookhaven Golf and Racket Club. And he's like, we got to do this all around the country. Like we can't just be the one thing.
It's interesting though to hear that because, with so many like people talking about video games, like how do I get my family, how do my kids out of the house, to hear that there's so much more activities of sports. I think that's, something to be optimistic about for the future.
Oh, the old on Thanksgiving Day where you had the whole family there, we go out for a touch football game. That's turned into a pickleball game because guess what? Everyone can play.
Everybody can play.
Right.
So the big revenue you talked about in basketball, and I suspect college football is the same way, comes from the television. Is pickleball, I did turn on the television recently and I saw Andre Agassi playing pickleball on television. Yep. So I thought, oh, here we go, right? This is crossing over now. Are you working as commissioner to secure more television? Is that the next sort of evolution financially?
Yeah, that's for all emerging sports, whether it be rugby or pickleball or whatever. That's when you've made it. When right now in our pickleball world, we do work with CBS. We do work with Fox. We do work with ESPN. We do work with the Tennis Channel. So we're kind of on a lot of different platforms. But, one day, one of them is going to say, we got to own this content exclusively, just like they do in the NFL or in the NBA and write the big check. And that hasn't occurred, in the pickleball world yet. We did something really smart in Tom's world, give Tom the credit. We partnered with the Tennis Channel and we started our own Pickleball TV. So if you're right below the Tennis Channel on however you do your TV, you're going to see Pickleball TV. We own that 50-50 with them. And so every tour stop is on all week long is on Pickleball TV. And then we go to the big carriers for the finals. So Fox will give us a window on Sunday from 10 a.m. to 12 for men's singles and mixed doubles finals, or CBS will do whatever. So all the rest of that content is carried live on Pickleball TV. And the numbers are incredible. There are just these pickleball fanatics that are watching this. The Tennis Channel launched a T2. They launched a second channel. And they said the launch of Pickleball TV is much more robust than it was when we launched T2. So we know we're doing the right things there. We're taking it to where the fanatics are, depending on the numbers that you believe. And but that's the next bastion. That's would be a really proud moment when one of the providers say, listen, we want to lock up your content and we're going to write you the check, and then you're there.
Yeah.
What do you think, like the current state of a franchise owner and then maybe the league itself in comparison to say, like what an average NFL or NBA team or the franchise or the league itself, and then where do you think the future of pickleball could be in the next 5-10 years?
When we started Major League Pickleball, the franchise fee was $1 million. Mark Cuban bought the Dallas team for $1 million, and his partner. We just sold one for $16 million in Florida. So you just never know where this is coming from, right? And what you're seeing on the bigger leagues, not in pickleball as much, but private equity is now jumping into, because the NBA changed its rules, and now you're seeing private equity firms take stakes in NBA teams, and that's a different thing. It's not an owner who loves his city and wants to be the owner of his fill-in-the-blank professional team in that city. So it's just changed. The price of poker has gone so far up. When you see the Lakers transact for $10 billion, there's not a lot of individuals necessarily that, I think the pool is smaller when the price tag is $10 billion versus $280 million, which is what Mark bought the Mavs for. So you're seeing a lot of different types of things and entities get into that business. And, it's a high profile thing. You just saw the University of Utah took a private equity partner and sold 51% of their athletic department.
Really?
Yeah, just happened the other day. It's the first one, I think it's the first one on the collegiate level. All the commissioners had to come out and say, well, we're not really interested in that, but they did it. And, you're turning over control to a partner, but they're bringing the capital where they can go in and have the very best of everything, facilities, coaches, all the things that maybe if you don't have the resources at your university to spend on those things, you now have. And so from a competition standpoint, they're in the Big 12, you can compete.
That's an interesting evolution. I'm from Memphis originally, and FedEx is provided a sponsorship at the University of Memphis with NIL money that allowed Memphis to be more competitive than they otherwise would be. And I thought, wow, a corporation now tied to the athletic department at a specific school. So it looks like we're just moving the boundaries.
And that's the beauty of Dallas, Texas, quite honestly. Yeah. Because in Memphis, Tennessee, you have FedEx, and you have maybe a couple others.
Maybe.
But and FedEx is, you look at St. Jude's on the PGA Tour. FedEx is so great, But in tougher markets, whether NBA markets or what have you, it's just right. The SMU just announced they're spinning off kind of their marketing assets and their sponsorship and ticket sales, and they're going to spin that off and have a separate kind of company with 60 employees managing it, and that's a great decision in Dallas, Texas. In Waco, Texas, or somewhere else where you don't have the corporate base, maybe that's not a great decision.
Right.
But you can take, in these major metropolitan areas, you can take that kind of risk because it's so robust.
As we come to close, wanted to close on the concept of like community sports, the community sports aspect of tying that together. How does that work out?
Professional sports, collegiate sports, any sports in a major metropolitan area or a small metropolitan area is a sense of pride. To see when we won the championship, to see 250,000 people lining the streets of Dallas, Texas when it's 100 degrees to cheer is powerful. It gives people a rallying cry. It's also a way to recruit people to these markets, right? When you think about Dallas, and we have a lot of assets here, but as you list them, in the top 5 are going to be, we are a great sports city. Mm-hmm. We were named 2 years ago the best sports city by Sports Business Journal, which financial people read the Wall Street Journal, sports people read Sports Business Journal. Comes out every day, same kind of thing. And SBJ says the best sports city in the country is Dallas, Texas. We have it all. We have obviously the big 4, but we have everything else. And, it's a recruiting tool. Young people, if you love sports, I might want to move to Dallas. I have an offer in Dallas and I have an offer in somewhere else. But I'm going to take the one in Dallas because, I love sports. I could walk from my uptown apartment to the American Airlines Center and I get to watch the Mavs and the Stars, and I can, have a short jaunt out to Harlington if I want to watch one of the 10 Cowboy games, and I can, right? So it's a sense of pride. It's a recruiting tool. And, Dallas is known as a really can-do city. The reason I've stayed in Dallas my whole career and not jumped around is I just like the vibe here. It's a can-do city. You look at this World Cup bid and you really peel it back. Dallas was the winner in the World Cup bid. The finals aren't in Dallas. They're not at AT&T Stadium. But there are more games in Dallas. Argentina's coming in twice to Dallas. And all the other things that go around World Cup, things like referee headquarters and international broadcasts, Dallas has sports owners like the Hunts that we talked about, and like the Joneses, and like the Cubans. They're into it, and they're 24/7 on it. And we have taken this because of our facilities, taken this market just to the very, very top. And then if I'm just a guy or a girl that likes sports and my team wins, I'm proud. I'm wearing our gear, whether it's the Big Four or whomever. Our WNBA team's getting a new home. They're building an arena for them. You know, I mean, it's just, you look, like I said earlier, to those that want to get into this business, there's 250 companies in the sports business in Dallas, Texas. So, I mean, I think that's what it does for community, and it's pride. You just want to, in our little world, we like to beat Houston and San Antonio. We like to say Dallas is the best city. Well, it helps you. Like when the Mavericks beat the Spurs or the Cowboys beat the Texans, like there's an extra kind of pep in your step if you're in Dallas, you know? So I think that's really important, and I think that's what has made Dallas so great. Like you look at the histories of the Cowboys, Mavs, Stars, Rangers, like there's championships and there's characters that have come and gone that, you know, are at the best at their level in being a professional. And I think that's why the city loves their teams.
Well, George, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's fascinating. I get to show off how ignorant I am about pickleball.
Yeah. You're going to go home and turn on the Pickleball channel, though. You're going to
I'll
watch
have to
a match.
YouTube it first.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have you to our office. We have a pickleball court on the 5th floor at 2100 Ross Avenue, which is kind of weird in a downtown office building. And we'll get some paddles and keep you.
I would love to check it out.
Thanks, George.
Thanks.